Good morning, everybody. Saturday morning here in Australia, late August. Beautiful, warm morning. We're starting to get serious hints of spring now, and beginning to just get that sense of what summer might be like. So I welcome you. Thanks very much for taking time to listen. Today's topic, I chose the topic of power versus force. Now that's based on the title of a book written by David Hawkins, an American who's now passed relatively, recently in the last 15 years, I think. But I think he had a lot of important things to say about our place as humans. And he characterized power as the infinite field of energy, consciousness, from which all things, all planets, all universes, all humans, all beings arise. He characterized that as power. And force he characterized as mostly the energy of the ego, meaning the energy we create and push into creating ideas about who we are, what societies we should have, how we should treat each other, based on ignorance of and disconnection from the fundamental power that enlivens all things. And you can certainly see that in the world, power versus force. And we can look at this on a couple of levels. Firstly, the individual level. Individually, our ego, which is really just the part of us that is evolutionarily connected to our survival. We had to put so much energy into escaping woolly mammoths and surviving in some somewhat hostile environment. Now, when we have so many of the material elements that we don't need to worry as much about it, certainly many people, some of course still do, but many have the chance to no longer need to survive so much physically. But emotionally we still do this, spiritually we still do this. We seek to build environments, stories about ourselves that give us a sense of meaning and value. And to the extent that they're disconnected from our essential, infinite, divine nature, it takes so much energy to maintain those stories and build those stories and build the environments that support those stories. And we've seen it so many times. I've certainly seen it in my life, where I've built so many stories about who I am, what I'm going to contribute to the world, how I am in business, how I interact with those I love. All of those stories and efforts take so much energy, and particularly because often those stories, ignorant of who we truly are, create so many issues, so much breakdown between humans, in families, and in societies. So clearly we are called, I believe, to connect to the infinite power and from there gain insight and power to understand who we are. So individually that's critical, and then that expands of course into families, communities and nations. On a national level, if you look at the most dictatorial systems, political and social systems in our world today, they are absolutely hinged on control and force. Obey the few or bear consequences. History is full of this. But David Hawkins used the example of Gandhi as how connecting to the infinite power ultimately will win. That's why I think Martin Luther King talked about that the arc of history tends towards justice, because force is not infinite. It's exhausting and will be exhausted. Justice, connection to the infinite power of God, consciousness, divinity, is infinite. Doesn't get exhausted. So, David Hawkins talked about Gandhi. Gandhi was a small Indian man wearing a loincloth dedicated to the freeing of India from the British Empire. British Empire was the strongest empire in the world. Gandhi went about dismantling this empire with non-violence. An example, he decided that he would take on the salt tax and walk from one side of the country to the sea. Started out by himself or a few others. By the time he arrived, there were thousands upon thousands with him. Similarly, there was a time when the Muslims and Hindus were fighting and killing each other, and he was calling out for them to resolve their differences and said, I'm going to stop eating and I won't start until you resolve this. And he almost died, fasted for days and days, I think more than 40 days. Don't quote me on the number, and in the end, it was the power that emanated from him and his commitment that led to, at least at that time, the resolution of that violence and to the dismantling of the British Empire's hold over India. So there's an example of actual power versus force. In our individual lives, similarly, we need to reach out to our inner wisdom and the power within to understand who we are, not create the stories that we think will keep us safe. They take so much energy and so much often issues and anxieties related to them. So David Hawkins also talked about this era being a time when the idea of Homo sapien will be replaced by Homo spiritus. That is an era in which the materialistic view of who we are and our evolution will change to where we no longer need to spend the energy of force in defining ourselves, our relationships with others, and the societies we build. I think it's true that that movement is already happening, that those changes are happening. And if that's true, as the Borg would say, resistance is futile, meaning the way to our happiness, but not just happy ha-ha, but the joyful, deep, peaceful essence within, and peace in our relationship with others and within our societies and within our world, are dependent on us connecting to the power that from which we all arise and ending the illusion of force. Of course, force has led to the death of millions upon millions upon millions of people. So this is not a simple, quaint idea. If we are to end the suffering of humanity, it will be dependent on us recognizing the folly of a materialistic view and embracing the power from which we all come and which resides within all of us. Something to ponder. Thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next week. Thank you. Take care.